You either help people make more money, you help them save money, you help them save time, you help them raise their status, or you help them live longer.
I often say to people that you can't sell car insurance to somebody who doesn't have a car. When it comes to thinking of your offer and your messaging, you need to make sure that you are aligning your messaging to the problems, to the pain points that they're experiencing, and then proving that there is an outcome that you can help them get toward.
People forget about is a lot of times they're sending outbound campaigns that they don't even want to receive. Poking the bear, basically asking a question that makes them think differently about the problem. What are you researching and how can we work backwards from that? It comes down to a knowledge arbitrage too.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Growth Mentor Live. So today we are covering how to launch outbound campaigns that work, and I am joined by two of the outbound greats, Eric Nowoslawski, founder of Growth Engine X, and Mark Colgan, founder of Yellow O. I'm Micah McGuire, head of content here at Growth Mentor, and today I am more your MC rather than your moderator, as Mark will be taking over the moderator's mic. However, I will say you probably want to grab pen and paper today you'll want to grab pen and paper today to take notes, as I have seen the outline for this session, and it is fantastic, and you'll want to take plenty of notes. However, if you miss anything or if you are not able to join us for the entire session, there will be a recording available. Finally, if you have any questions you'd like to shoot to Mark and Eric, please put those in the chat. We will be collecting them for our Q&A at the end of the session. All right. Well, Eric, Mark, it is great to have you both here with us today.
Thank you, Micah. Great to be here. And Eric, great to be on this session with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
All
awesome.
right.
Well, let's get into it. And Eric, when we first started speaking about this webinar, one of the things I mentioned is that a lot of the mentees on the Growth Mentor platform, they often struggle to get started with outbound because there's so many options, there's so much content out there. But I think you shared something the other week, which were principles of outbound to focus on in 2024. Would you mind starting with what those three principles are?
Yeah, absolutely. And so now I might apologize. You said three principles, and I'm not quite sure exactly what three principles there are, but I definitely have advice of where people would get started. I think a lot of people get a lot of analysis paralysis when they're just setting things up that is really just not necessary. So one, if you're just trying to get set up, there's three things that you need to be able to hit, which maybe these are the three principles. You need to nail your email infrastructure, the data or the list that you're going to be sending to, and then what you're actually going to send to this list. And would those have been the three principles that we were talking about?
They are most of them. Let me remind you, you said give more, make more, long sequences are dead, and testing value propositions are going to be more.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yes. Okay. So that is, we'll get into that in a little bit. Sorry. But for the people who are just trying to get started, those are the three that we need to be talking about. Email infrastructure, where are you going to send these emails from? Data, who are you going to send these emails to? And then what are you going to actually say to these people? So then we'll get into the longer sequences that are dead and all those other things. So right now we find that straight down the middle, Google and Outlook inboxes work better than anything else. If you're new, don't be messing around and trying these new platforms like Superwave and Mailscale and Mailreef and all these other platforms. There's time and places for all of them. And we have used Mailreef successfully. We've used Superwave successfully. We've used Mailscale successfully. But there are things that happen with those platforms you just need to be aware of. And I'm not going to get into that right now. Just set up regular Google and Outlook inboxes. If you get a plan with a software platform like smartlead.ai or instantly.ai, no matter what, either of those options are going to be good. And I would just go with one of those options. So both of those platforms, they have guides on their website of exactly how to set up Outlook inboxes and how to set up Google inboxes. We own 10,000 inboxes in my agency, and the process that we use to set up all those inboxes is basically the same thing as what they say on the website. We've just solved for scale. Mm-hmm. So don't think that we're reinventing the wheel. Exactly what they say on their blog post is exactly what we're doing. Just follow what they say to do, and you're going to be doing exactly what we're doing. So that's email infrastructure. Data, I'm just going to say for most cases out there, just cut to the chase and just buy Apollo.io. Don't be messing around and trying different platforms and not sure which ones you should go to. Apollo.io is going to be, it is the closest thing to a copy of LinkedIn that we found for the price. Now, Don't also, like, I know that there's problems with Apollo.io, but as far as you just getting started, just go with Apollo.io. We're going to be all set from there. Then what the next thing that people will come about is they're like, well, I target plumbers and there's not a lot of plumbers on Apollo. Apollo stinks for plumbers. And it's like, that's not Apollo's fault. Plumbers don't have LinkedIn profiles. How the heck is Apollo supposed to know who these plumbers are? So if you target people who have a low LinkedIn presence, but a high Google Map presence, then you could use a platform like D7 Lead Finder, and then you can start building your lists from there. So then really quick, you'd be Apollo or D7 Lead Finder are going to get you started for whatever you need to be doing on those sides. And then then we get into the copywriting. So that's where I was talking about that, like, longer sequences are dead and give more to do more and all those things. So when you're doing your copywriting, a lot of times the biggest mistake I see people send in emails is they're sending emails the exact same way that everybody else is sending emails. And it just looks exactly the same. And so a big way to just cut to the chase and send a successful email is to send an email where you are giving away value, or at least answering the question to your prospect that, hey, if you take a call with me, if you respond to this email, this is the value that you're going to get in return. And so I know a lot of SaaS companies, they sometimes struggle with this because lead magnets are a little bit tough, and it's tough for them to tangibly give value and those kinds of things. And so like Alex Hormozy probably has the best definition of a lead magnet, where a lead magnet is just something that somebody else is charging for, but you're giving away for free. And the more that they think that it's worth on the market, the better the lead magnet is. So for example, when we're running lead magnets for our own agency, we give away full TAM enrichments of like up to 20,000 companies pulled from LinkedIn for absolutely free before they even hop on a call with us. And now to get the contact list, you have to hop on a call with us, but we give the account list first. So when we're emailing people, we say, hey, I think you sell to these kinds of companies. It's going to take a little bit of elbow grease, but if I pulled together 20,000 companies off of LinkedIn, what other enrichments would you want me to add? And I could just do this for you. And you don't even have to take a call with me. We get tons of responses to that email. People respond all the time to that. And it's because we're giving value first without even having to hop on a call. We are saying, hey, we will do this service for you that will take us time and actually costs you money. Do you want to take a spin for it? You want to roll the dice and we'll send you a list, right? Then we have a whole funnel of then we ask them if they want the contacts, so that you got to take a call for the contacts and all those other kinds of things. And so then when we were talking about long sequences are dead as well, that's the other thing too, is so many times people are like, well, sales is all about follow-up, right? We need to follow up 7 times before they, buy. It's like, yeah, it's like 7 times across all the channels. If you were put in a 7 email sequence, you would not be happy. And I guess that's another thing that people forget about, is a lot of times they're sending outbound campaigns that they don't even want to receive, right? And so I'm going to kind of put a pin in it here that if you're just trying to get started, just keep it super easy, Instantly or Smart Lead, Google or Outlook, pick whichever you want for your email infrastructure. Go to Apollo for your data, super easy. Then, or D7 Lead Finder if you're targeting more local business companies. And then when it comes to your emails, first think, what would you respond to? Second, think, how do I make this worth this person's time? And then third, think of a really cool lead magnet that, is a good cross between how much work you have to put in versus how many people actually book the calls versus how many people actually close from the lead magnet, because you could give away all the things in the world, but if they don't close, it doesn't matter. And so I guess I'll stop that answer at this point.
Eric, thanks so much for that. I think so succinctly putting in great places of where to start. I've got some plans to go through some of those in a little bit more detail for the attendees a little bit later. What I want to talk about now is the point you made about the messaging and what you're actually saying. So I feel that a lot of companies and especially founders, they struggle with coming up with their value proposition for their business because they're so close to what their business is and what their business does. So you obviously work, I think you're sending over almost 1.5 million emails a month at the moment. So you've got lots of different businesses. How do you approach coming up with that value proposition for all of these different types of businesses? Is there any topics or trends that you see?
Yeah. So that's a great question, and possibly in need of a new YouTube video for me to create. So the first thing that we have to think about is you have to assess what channel are you on, right? So the channel that we're on is obviously cold email. I don't do anything outside of that channel unless it's for myself. Cold email inherently is a demand generation platform. And so what I mean by that is there's two kinds of offers. You either are a demand capture offer or you're a demand generation offer. And so demand capture works really well with like Google ads. So if somebody needs cybersecurity services, emailing them is going to be really tough. But if they're in need of cybersecurity services, they're going to be searching on Google. Google ads are perfect to capture that demand as soon as they're searching for it, right? So you have the Google ads of the world to like capture people's attention while they're searching for that exact thing. And then on the flip side, you have the demand generation, and cold email is the demand generation platform. I mean, so is cold calling and those kind of things too. But so what I mean by demand generation is oftentimes demand generation oftentimes has a element to it that people didn't know was possible, right? And that's the whole point of Outbound too, right? Is like we are using outbound messaging in order to get messages in front of people that they didn't know was possible before. And so if you uncovered a new, like one outbound campaign we used to run, that we used to do this all the time, but we don't do it anymore. There was an exploit in LinkedIn events that I could reliably get like 4,000 people to attend a LinkedIn event. And so we had an offer where we would cold email people and we'd be like, in 3 weeks, we could add 4,000 people to your email list and we could run an event with 4,000 people registered. And we usually see a certain amount show up and we could share more about those metrics. Would you want to know how we're doing this on LinkedIn events? That is super good example of demand generation because people, one, didn't know that it was possible. And two, they're like, all the time they want to be running an event with 4,000 people. Like you don't have to capture that demand. If you just told somebody that you could run an event with 4,000 people, they'd be interested. They just don't know how you're doing it. So then when you email them, you're generating that demand because they didn't know it existed before, and then you're going into it. And so the reason I spend so much time on that is because every offer has demand capture elements to it and demand generation elements to it as well. So website design is something I often use as an example too, where that's really a demand capture offer. Like for you to redesign your website, if you could email me with the most personalized email ever, and if you've been to my website, is probably one of the worst websites of anybody who's on this call right now, but there is basically nothing that you can say to me that is going to make me say, you know what, we should redo our website. This is totally true. Like we need, because I basically get no customers from my website. Mm-hmm. All of my customers come from LinkedIn and YouTube. I don't care. Like I just really don't care. So with website redesign, somebody had to kind of wake up that morning and say, oh, you know what? Yeah, our website kind of stinks. We should get this done. And they have a project in the works, and you email them about website design. And then you kind of just got lucky that you just are like, oh yeah, they're going to do it. Staffing and recruiting is actually probably even more of a great example is, they had to wake up that morning and say, hey, we're not hiring this person. We're open to using an agency. Right. And so there's the demand capture side, but then on the other side, there's the demand generation side where as much as possible, you want to make your cold emails into a demand generation offer. So if you're doing website redesign, instead of saying, hey, we could redesign your website so it looks way better for your customers, we could be spinning it in a way of like, hey, we just helped another SaaS company take their conversion of like on-site visitors to free trial users. We increased it by 250%. Do you want to see how? And then it's like, whoa, how'd you increase it by 250%? They get on the call and it's website redesign. It's like, okay, great. But like you slanted it towards demand generation, right? And so the first thing you want to do is like, think about the pieces of your offer that are those super interesting tidbits. Even if you have to hide your offer a little bit of exactly how you do something, a demand generation talks a lot about outcomes, and it talks a lot about things that people don't already know that's possible, right? Like if you were going to tell somebody, like I do bookkeeping services, you're like looking to get lucky with who needs bookkeeping services right now. But if you could tell somebody that you can help them make better financial forecasts so that they could do their headcount planning for the year and they don't even have to think about it. Oh, well, and maybe that's a little bit of demand capture too, but way better than just pitching, just bookkeeping, right? So we want to slant towards demand generation. Then the second thing you want to do is now we're getting into our value propositions. And so we think about this as messaging towards pains, messaging towards outcomes, and then messaging towards lead magnets. And I would say this is still a work in progress for me. So I'm very sure about the demand capture and demand generation, but this is something that I hypothesize in my head about all the time. But I'm pretty set on pains, outcomes, and lead magnets at this point. And so then what we want to do is we just want to write out like, what are all the pains that we can solve? And what are all those things? And so then we just write out, people have a pain for us. They have a pain where they're not sure that they're using a proper email deliverability infrastructure, or they have a pain that they have a gigantic market, but it's going to cost $50,000 for them to get the whole thing enriched, and they can't pay that. It's ridiculously expensive. There's all these things that are within our capability to fix for somebody. But if I just emailed somebody and said, "Hey, we can help you get leads. Do you want to get leads? We can help you get leads." It's just not going to work in the same way, right? And so that's why our lead magnet is that. Well, that's why we use a lead magnet of the free accounts, because I actually see us more as a data company than we are like really a lead gen company. But anyway, and so write out all of the pains that you solve and how you can message towards those pains, and how could you message towards those pains with like outcomes and special things that you do that nobody else does, and all those things. And then just outcome messaging is just basically like, hey, for this other company, we helped them accomplish this thing. We just want to talk about how we accomplish this thing, and maybe it would be useful for you, right? And all the different outcomes that you could cause for people, and all those different things. And then lead magnets too. And lead magnets are just micro offers, really. It's just like, what can you offer for free? What can you offer for free that, like you could scalably do and provide value for people? And so then internally, if you're using us as an agency, we have 4 different templates of like angles that we use, where we just take your value propositions and essentially we put them into templates where we just know that we're just hacking attention. Like these templates are just made to just hack attention as much as possible, and then we'll start running custom campaigns for people. But that's you like to just round it out, I would just say it's like, well, even deeper than that, I guess. Then the final layer is then like everything also comes down to there's only 5 things in the world that you can sell, and this is another thing that I'm sure of. You either help people make more money, you help them save money, you help them save time, you help them raise their status, or you help them live longer. And so in B2B, we don't have to think about status and helping them live longer, because live longer is like going to a gym, and then status is like Rolex. I don't care what anybody says. Like, if I get an email and somebody said you're going to help me get promoted, I just don't believe you. So I don't really care about the status offerings in cold email. And so then whenever you have these value propositions, these outcomes, these lead magnets, all these things, it then further breaks down into how can you help people save time? How can you help people save money? How can you help people make more money? That's basically what all the offers come down to. And that's the brainstorming tree that we use to think about that. So I hope that made sense.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. I often say to people that you can't sell car insurance to somebody who doesn't have a car. So when it comes to thinking of your offer and your messaging, you need to make sure that you are aligning your messaging to the problems, to the pain points that they're experiencing, and then proving that there is an outcome that you can help them get towards.
And that actually just reminded me of something, because you're totally right. Demand capture could also be a demand generation offer if you do your list right. Right? So like bookkeeping, you almost have to just be like hopeful that somebody needs a bookkeeper. But if you make your list of only companies that were founded in the last year, lots of those people, they don't even know what they're doing. If you make your list, imagine this. So if you're just emailing everybody, do you need bookkeeping? You're going to get lucky. Like you just like, I don't even know like who's going to respond to that. You're just going to find people who just hate their current accountant. Then if you ratchet it down to anybody who started their business in the last 2 years, a little bit better. Then if you ratchet it down to anybody who started their business in the last 2 years and has no finance or accounting people on their team, a little bit better. Then if you ratchet it down and you say anybody who started their company last 2 years, no finance or accounting people on their team, and it's their first time ever being a CEO or a founder, you email them about bookkeeping. You don't have to really get that crazy. You could just say, hey, saw the company was founded in 2023. Congrats on it being so soon. Also, congratulations on this being your first time, running a company that I saw on your LinkedIn profile. How are you thinking about bookkeeping? Like, you don't even have to get crazy with your offering and all these things when your list gets involved with that. So that's another thing. You're totally right. Like, I love that you said you can't sell car insurance to somebody who doesn't have a car. And that's totally true. You can demand capture gets really hard in cold email unless your list solves for that side. Yeah.
I want to dive into lists a little bit more in just a second. But what I want to come back to first of all is you mentioned the lead magnet, and you give a really good example of a lead magnet that can be used in your business, which is you're helping people as well generate leads and you're dealing with a lot of data. Can you share some examples without naming any customers of like different types of businesses and different lead magnets that you've helped come up with?
Yes. So, and the only hesitation I have is it's so hard to give examples because you just don't know. Like every business, it's just so different. It's just everyone has a micro offer. So like we've got one company that what they do is they help apartment buildings. They help apartment buildings that don't allow Airbnb listings. And what they do is search all of the images and then try to find an image on Airbnb that looks like the images that they have posted as well, and then say, hey, there's an illegal Airbnb going on. You need to take this down. And so this was kind of interesting because the delivery of the lead magnet was the email. So then anybody that we could do that match for, we'd be like, hey, like I saw your properties and like, do you allow Airbnb listings? Because I think we found one on Airbnb, and we would just send them the whole example and be like, I think this is your apartment and it looks like it's on Airbnb. You know, what's going on here? Now that was extremely low volume because it was kind of hard to run and we only did it at like really target accounts and everything, but it worked great. I think we sent like 150 emails and we got like 35 responses. Like people were stoked to receive that email. Then there's other stuff like we would send people AI generated like customer support conversations where we'd scan the website, see what customer support conversations people would usually have, and then we would put that in the email and we'd say, I bet your customer support conversations kind of go like this. Here's like a script. If you call this phone number right now, we built a bot for you that's going to pretend to be a customer support rep for your company. Just call this phone number and it'll like happen for you. And so that was a pretty cool one that we did. Trying to think of anything else. Like I said, it's all about like how can you show your value, but also show something that they know that other people are charging for. Like where people go wrong with lead magnets is they're like, hey, do you want to see this webinar that I did? You know, Mark and I did. You know, with for a growth mentor, and it's like, no, they don't. Like it's fine. Like they really probably don't. But that also like cost you nothing to make. Like you did it for 30 minutes and then, you were done. Right. And so the best lead magnets actually have some sort of cost that you actually have to fulfill on. Geez, I'm trying to think of any other ones. We had one where there was a map software that we were working with and like we would custom build maps programmatically. And in the email, we'd send one map, but then we had like a whole book of portfolio of like the custom made maps for this company. Is kind of super complicated what they do with like a whole custom portfolio of all the things. We've built ROI calculators, though those are pretty easy, but we show off in the email. Like we've literally built the ROI calculator, but then like in the email, I scraped the Google shopping listings for as many shopping listings as I could. Then I averaged out all of the prices. And then I said, hey, I think your AOV is this, and I think this. And if all of my assumptions are correct, I think your ROI would be this. But if you really want to check, here's our ROI calculator. So we were already sending it up front too. Geez, I could keep going. Like we do it all the time. It's like really, it's tough when people don't have lead magnets. But like if you don't have lead magnets, the biggest thing is like you as a company, every company just comes down to knowledge arbitrage, right? Like even you go to a restaurant, the only thing the restaurant is really selling you is like, one, they know how to get ingredients better than you, and two, they know how to cook it better than you. Like that's really like the whole business of a restaurant, and also the service element and those things as well and everything, right? But it comes down a lot of it to a knowledge arbitrage too. And so there's got to be some insight that you have in the business. So even if our customers don't have a lead magnet, a lot of times we'll just be saying like, do you just even want to know how other B2B SaaS companies are decreasing their speed to lead when somebody does an opt-in form? Like we do this all the time. We just want to talk about the strategies for it. And so like that becomes a lead magnet as well too, and things like that. So yeah, I hope there's enough examples.
No, plenty of examples, and I think like the examples that you're sharing are like top 1% of things that you can do. And I think sometimes I'm often guilty of this, of being around cold email experts all the time and seeing campaigns and results that we forget the majority of people, not the majority of people, but the majority of outbound is terrible, right? So going from that couch to 5K, one of the ways that I think about some of the lead magnets or value that you can offer to prospects is think about what jobs they're trying to achieve and what things that you could potentially help them with. So, for example, if they are a recruitment client of mine, we're sending just a PDF, or we're not sending it, we're asking them to reply to get the PDF, which are like, here are the mistakes that early stage companies do when they hire marketers. And it's oftentimes, here are the big mistakes that you're often going to make. You're trying to look for the wrong person. Here are some suggestions, and here's some job descriptions that you could use to hire the right type of candidate. So I think the examples that you shared are amazing, and there's a lot of thought that goes into it. But I feel like also thinking of the value and just helping your prospect do their job a little bit better can also be a great way to deliver some value in that sort of lead magnet.
And I totally agree. I'm also trying to give you my highlight reel here. There's also plenty of customers that we have that were like, hey, what lead magnet do you want to use? And then we really get nothing back from them. And then we have to send campaigns without lead magnets. Like, so I completely, I completely know what that's like. But then you're right. Like, even just like those mini resources, like they could be so helpful to at least even just standing out in the crowd. And especially for staffing and recruiting, because like I said, like, as soon as you post a job, these people are getting hammered by recruiters. Like every recruiter has basically, I mean, if you haven't yet, you got to get on this. Every recruiter has figured out how to scrape Indeed and then just start hammering these people when they start posting jobs. And you got to do something to just show that you're like human, and you actually are thinking about helping them solve their problem. So I totally agree with that. Not all of them have to be that complicated. Cold email too is like, a lot of it's just outrunning the bear. And if you don't know what I mean by that saying, it's like, if you're in a group of 10 people, you don't need to be the fastest person in the group. You just need to be faster than the least fast person in the group. And it's like, that's the same thing with cold email. Like, even when I post stuff on LinkedIn, like Josh Braun, who I regard as probably one of the best cold email copywriters. I love his work. He received an email that I wrote, he screenshotted it, and then basically posted about how it was so terrible. But for every 10 people we reached out to, we were getting a positive response. So I was like, I mean, that's great. Like, you think it's terrible and I love you and I love your content, but you're just wrong. Like, that's just like, and so it's just, so even though like some people have opinions where they're like, oh, it's just not good enough, a lot of it really just comes down to like, can you just be better than all of the garbage that's just in their inbox that day?
And there's a lot of garbage. And one of the topics I'd like to move on to now is list building, because I feel that is one of the unlocks that people can make when it comes to building the right list to target the right people in the first place. I've seen a lot of agency outreach in my inbox as like a founder of an agency, and it's awful. It's not even my name on it. They're talking about all manners of services under the sun that have nothing to do with what I'm planning or what I would even do in my business. So can we dive into list building and maybe just the approach that you take when you bring on a new client and you think, okay, where do I start with building a list of prospects?
Yeah. And so it's so funny. I even got this question yesterday. And so what I always ask our customers is I say, look, what we can do or what we strive to do is I want to send the same email that you would send if you were to research a prospect for 10 minutes. I want to send that email. So when you start looking up a company and you want to reach out to them, what are the things that you're looking out for? And so then they'll start telling me, and they're like, if they're using HubSpot, that's really good signal. I'm like, okay, if they're using HubSpot, what does that mean? And they're like, oh, like this. And then it's like, if they're a chief marketing officer versus a VP of marketing, this. And I'm like, okay, great. If they're a chief marketing officer and they've got 10 people on their team versus a chief marketing officer who has 2 people on their team, like, great. What does that mean? What does that all change to? And so people ask me this all the time. They're always like, how do you build these lists? And I'm like, I don't know. My customers build them for me. Like, I don't really build these lists. It's just, you just have to think about like, what do you manually search out for, and then find the data provider that's going to get you that answer backwards. And so, I mean, there's so much data. Like, when I first got started, there wasn't this much data, and the cost of data and the amount of data that you get is just like, the cost of data is going down and the amount of data we have access to is just increasing. And then AI just makes it even crazier. And so, I would say like, that's what I tell everybody is, what are you researching and how can we work backwards from that? So our lists, like I said, if you just need to get started, another thing that I would kind of say too is, this is, I think, where people get paralyzed as well is, don't get me wrong, if you're trying to sell marketing agency services to other marketing agencies, you're going to be like, that's not going to be good. Like, that's going to be rough. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. But as long as your list, I would say, is like 90% there or 80% there, as far as like you're talking to the right people, in my opinion, value propositions take over from there. And so what I mean by that is like for bookkeeping, yeah, it's going to make a gigantic difference. for bookkeeping if you're emailing people who started their company a year ago and this is their first time being a founder. Huge increase in responses that you're going to get there. The other thing though is your list is going to have like 1,000 people on it, and you're going to use it like once a quarter. Like you're not going to be able to hit that list over and over and over again. I mean, maybe it's more than 1,000 people, right? But it's just not going to be that large. And so that's what I mean, where it's like, okay, like you still are going to have to go a level up and find like the companies who just got founded a year ago and be emailing them. And so after you're generally correct, I say that value propositions take over. And then once you get your value proposition right, then you go back to list building. So I guess my answer to that question is just like build lists the same way that you're manually researching people. And so usually I'm not even usually, all the time, we start our list in Apollo because like I said, it's like the closest copy to LinkedIn that we can find. We start our list in Apollo and then we move to Clay to do all of the custom things. But like I said, after you're like 80-90% directionally correct, we think more of value propositions at that point. Then once we get value propositions correct, then we think of like, okay, how can we go crazy with the list and everything? So
Yeah, Eric, I want to add, I think a lot of people think about outbound campaigns as a one and done thing. So I'm going to build a list, I'm going to send out my message, and then I get replies or I don't get replies. And I think people need to think about them as campaigns, as they truly are. This is going to be a message to a segment of people with a specific topic or problem or pain point. It might work, it might not. Let's try the next segment, and let's try the next segment and list. And I think when people are just getting starting, they often are they're fans of their own product, and they say, well, we can sell to anyone and everyone.
Oh yeah.
But and that's a challenge because you can't write compelling messaging, even with the help of AI, that's going to be relevant and really help people with when the messages land in the inbox. So if somebody came to you and said, we have a HR software and we can sell to any HR team, how would you encourage them to think about segmenting what any HR team means?
So then I would just think about like, yeah, okay, so you have an HR software and you can sell to any HR team. That's great, but like which HR teams really get the most amount of value from you? And I hate to just give like such a basic answer, but that's really what it comes down to is like who really gets value? Because there's a huge difference again between HR teams at enterprise companies, and then there's huge differences at HR teams at startups, and then huge differences of HR teams. Because like an HR team at a startup is in like growth mode, and they're a recruiting function.
Yep.
And then there's HR teams at manufacturing companies. And even if both companies have 50 employees, like an HR team at a manufacturing company is way more like a benefits advisor and like making sure that, there's no complaints within the employees than a recruiter, right? Like it's a completely different world. And so we would just outline first, like who is your most valuable customer and who gets the most value out of it. And that's not something that we can really do. That's something that either you have to have the insights into, or you have to look into your CRM and then like enrich the companies and see what all of them have to do with each other, and find like the best contacts that come from that.
Yeah, and also sense check what you're saying. So I've seen ICP and persona documents where they've refined their ideal customer profile, so the types of companies they want to reach. They have to be over a certain age, they have to do over a certain revenue, this team size. And then when I said to them, well, go and have a look, pull out some examples of companies that fit this criteria, there is none. So like we have to build out these lists in reality. And again,
That's true.
It seems like basics to cover now, but for those that are just getting started with their outbound, sometimes it is starting with that hypothesis of these are the people that we see get the most value. And if they get the most value and they're between 10 and 50 people, let's find more people that like that. And maybe let's try 100 people, but understand a 100-person company might have a different HR contact to contact than the 20-person company does with that HR example.
Yep. Totally agreed.
So, Eric, I want to move on to another topic, which is around personalization. And again, so my opinion of personalization using AI is it definitely can be useful. I just wouldn't recommend that you over rely on AI to personalize your message or to write your whole message for you. Again, in the mindset of getting started with Outbound, maybe looking for a silver bullet or two, how would you approach personalization and thinking about using that as part of building out the campaigns?
Great. So here we go. So one, I totally agree. AI shouldn't write the whole email for you. We're working on something that I might be able to work on this weekend. I call the Godfather prompt that maybe we'll get AI to write the whole thing. But I certainly agree. The way we use AI to write snippets of the message, because the more words you ask AI to generate, the more you lose control and you just have no clue what's going to come out the other side. And so we have it write snippets for sure. And so I think of this as a spectrum of relevance, recency, personalization. And so obviously the best email that we could send is a relevant email. I get that. Completely understand. So like so by relevance, we mean if I were to email a restaurant and I were to say, hey, I saw in your Yelp reviews, people say there's too many potholes in the parking lot. Do you want me to come over and I'll fill the potholes for you? Amazingly relevant. Like that, like you nailed it. Like of like they would have to have not seen that email or just don't care to fill their potholes to not respond to that email, right? And so relevance is when you're using data, whether it's scraped data or the way you pull your list. So like what scraped data would be is like if you mention CSV import on your website, you're scraping that data. Or if you pull a list of direct to consumer companies that are on Shopify Plus and they all share a common problem because Shopify Plus doesn't solve this problem, then you have a relevant list and you can message to them relevantly. So you have the scraped data, you have the way that your list is generated, or you use AI. Another example is the like, your company was founded in the last year, you've never been a CEO before, and you have no finance and accounting person. Amazing. Like you're not going to use AI in that message to be like, hey, like I saw all these things, because that is just true about the list. Yeah. You don't need any AI messaging to make that happen. Then you could build in relevance where like a lot of times we'll use AI for staffing and recruiting, which to be quite honest, like God bless your soul for working with staffing and recruiting companies. I just refuse to work with staffing and recruiting companies. But in the past, what we've done is we would look at open job descriptions and then we would like use AI to summarize what they're looking for in that job description and then write a message of like, we would basically say like, it looks like this is really important to you. And then we would quote ourselves in the job description too. So we would say, it looks like you really need somebody who is on time to meetings because the job description said you're looking for somebody who's punctual, blah, blah, blah. And like, we would quote ourselves. So then it was like, whoa, like he read the job description. So anyway, kind of just off the train there. So when you're using AI, like you want to bring all of the data to the AI in order to make an inference about the data that you still want to say to them. So we did that with like the ROI calculator when I did the average order values of all of them. We used AI to come up with a range, and like that's a use of the AI there. Then in the middle, there's recency, where I believe that recency is better than personalization. And so obviously, nobody hate me. I know relevance is the best, but if you don't have a relevant thing to say in your messaging, I still believe you should be putting AI messaging or some kind of like custom snippet into your emails, because it, one, makes them stand out, and two, it at least has this like thing of like, if they feel like there was at least a little bit of effort put into the email, instead of looking at your email for half a second, they might give you 2 seconds. And that might make all the difference in the world, right? So then on the next level of the spectrum, or maybe the pyramid or the flow chart, I don't know. Like these are still things I'm thinking about, is recency. And so recency isn't as good as relevance, but I think it's better than personalization. And so recency is like, it is very normal for you to see somebody's LinkedIn post and say, wow, that's a great point. I've never heard of this person before. I've never seen anything about this person before, but I saw their LinkedIn post and I'm going to reach out to them now. Right. And you can like say the LinkedIn algorithm showed it to you. So that's a perfect example of, if we don't have a relevant thing to say in our first line or in the middle of the email with AI, whatever we're doing, if we don't have something relevant to say with AI, I mean, obviously all your messages, you want it to be relevant, but we're talking about personalization here. Then we'll go for what we call the recency waterfall, which I'll have a YouTube video about that this weekend, where we check for truly recent things that have happened to this person that would be like, I know why they're reaching out, because they saw the thing that recently happened. So great. And so we'll check, like, are they new in their role? Have they ever been promoted? Have they been promoted recently? Did they post recently on LinkedIn? Did they recently publish a blog article? Did the company recently post on LinkedIn? Did the company recently get in the news? Did the company, like, we have all these things that we check for, just so that when we reach out to somebody, they're like, okay, I see how they saw me. Then there's personalization, which the kind of, so when I talk about personalization, I am not talking about like, hey, I saw you went to Rutgers Business School, you should read my email. It's like, no, like that is like so 3 years ago. That's not what I'm talking about with personalization. If we can't do the recency thing, we'll also personalize. And so we've also got tons of custom snippets that we'll use to just really just like either show the extra effort in the email or make somebody really question, like, was this AI generated or was this manual? So like one go-to that we have for first lines is we'll take what the company does as their mission and be like, hey, I saw how your company helps fitness enthusiasts, do more push-ups, and I needed to reach out. It's like, okay, like it's not the greatest personalization in the world, but if you got nothing else, like it's good for you to go to. Then we'll also, like, in a PS line, we have like I've created a way to like output company news stories that are positive. You don't want to send negative news stories. Company news stories that were positive while somebody was at the company or while they were at the college they were at. And then we'll say like, hey, like I saw, by the way, PS, I saw you were working at Salesforce between 2010 and 2022. Were you a part of the Tableau acquisition? So then we'll just personalize it where like all we're doing there is just like attention hacking, where all we're trying to do is just use AI to just make the person be like, was this real? What was like, what's going on here? And just get a little bit just out of them. And so relevance is always the best. And that's where you want to start. And that really comes down to like, if I were to manually send a message, what am I researching and what do I say to these people? Then if you have none of that, recency, AI generates something around like something recent that has popped up about this person. And then we always have fallbacks of like that company mission thing is usually a fallback that we'll use. And then you go to personalization where it's just like, hey, Mark, by the way, the only reason I found your LinkedIn profile was because the LinkedIn algorithm told me that you were connected with this person and this person. I'm sorry, but like I'm coming out of the blue here, whatever, like just something that they're like, oh, I've never seen that before. Interesting. Like even a PS line that works so well when you're targeting local business owners is we'll just like call out a restaurant in the area and we'll just be like, hey, have you ever been to the steakhouse? Like Food Network said it was one of the best in the area. People just love that line and it has nothing to do with the message. And so I get like why people give me flack for it, but it works. I just got a positive response today. And so, actually we got like 4. I can share my screen and show you. We got so many people who are like, wow, yeah, that's a great restaurant. So like that's when I think about using AI, it's relevance, recency, personalization, attention hacking. That's not just like BS kind of stuff. So yeah.
Thanks, Eric. And I think as well, it does depend on the audience that you're sending it out to. So
For
people
sure.
that have been receiving or people that know these AI tools and how personalization works, like marketers or salespeople, they might be a bit more cynical to some of this than the restaurant owner or the facilities manager as well. So I think keep in mind who the audience is. But what ultimately matters in the message is if you haven't built your list correctly, and you're sending a message to somebody with relevancy or personalization and you're trying to sell car insurance, but they don't own a car, no matter how good the message is, you're not going to get a reply. Maybe you'll get a thanks for the message, but no thanks. Eric, I want to move on to just the last topic and maybe we've only got 5 or 6 minutes to cover this before we open up for Q&A. If you have any questions, please do put it in the chat. I'll keep an eye on those now. But I want to leave people with message frameworks and how to think about writing the email. I don't really like giving templates away because I find people copy paste and hit send. So do you have like a framework that you typically follow when it comes to going from a blank piece of paper and drafting that email?
Yeah, and so I totally agree with you. I don't like giving templates because I find it's the same exact thing too. So I actually just go like I find like there's nothing to rewrite here. Josh Braun and John Barrows have basically given great frameworks that you should just be using from them. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Like we're sending a campaign, like Clay.com brought us back to like be the outbound agency for Clay.com. And like I'm about to send an email where we're like, hey, I bet your reps are spending all of their time like doing manual research. Clay combines all these data providers. Here's what it pulled about your company. And then we're like, ZoomInfo says this about you. Crunchbase says this about you. BuiltWith says this about you. And so we break that framework. We're even going to screenshot their homepage. And then like, I'm going to say, PS, Clay can do crazy things. Like I took a screenshot of your homepage and asked, I asked AI what Leonardo da Vinci would think of your homepage if it were a website designer. And that's going to be like our PS line in there just to like show off the AI side of Clay too. And so like we break the framework when we can. But if you're just getting started, like Josh Braun, John Barrows, you don't need anybody else. Don't go anywhere else. Just Josh Braun has a great course on this. And so John Barrows has the framework of why you, why now.
Yeah.
And so it's like first line, why you? So, hey, I am reaching out to you because you are a VP of sales at an e-commerce brand. And why now? and I'm reaching out right now because are you guys being affected by the new Google SEO changes? Blah, blah, blah. So why you, why now? Then you go into like how you have helped other companies in the past successfully and what you're able to do. And then like a soft call to action of just, are you the right person to talk to about this? Would you want to learn more about it? If we could do this outcome, would that be useful to you? Like those kind of things. Mm-hmm. Then Josh Braun's framework, the way I think of his is like same thing, a little bit of a why you, why now, like first line. But then he's got this awesome thing that I love to think about called poking the bear.
Yeah.
And poking the bear, it's probably the hardest thing to master in cold email copywriting, but it's basically asking a question that makes them think differently about the problem. So instead of asking somebody, and this is the example he uses all the time, instead of asking somebody, how are you preparing for your Ironman in 3 months? It's asking somebody, how are you preparing for your Ironman so you don't get shin splints right before the race? And it's like, so I didn't need any help preparing for my Ironman before that. But you know what? I don't really want to get shin splints before the race. So that's interesting. So then you poke the bear on that. And then he still goes into case study and call to action, or like outcome and call to action and things like that. One thing, just like when we onboard a new customer, the first template that we run for everybody, and we do this with like internal domains, so we can like get a new customer and then like launch as soon as they approve copywriting, basically. But the first thing that we run is that recency waterfall, where we're like just looking for something recent about the prospect. Then we hit them with either a poke the bear question or a unique selling proposition like value test, and we'll like generate 10 of those, and we'll see which one of those 10 is working the best. Then we use AI to generate the third sentence, where we AI generate like what their company does, and then we have what our company does, and we AI generate like how our company would be able to help them. So then like it would be like, hey, like when we do bookkeeping, we would do bookkeeping so that you could focus on fitness enthusiasts and getting them prepared for their Ironman instead of thinking about the numbers in your business. And like we AI generate that for every person that goes out, and then we have a soft call to action. So when we first bring on a customer and we're first doing messaging validation, like that's our go-to template right there, and people should just steal that.
Eric, thanks for that. And I believe you use Clay to help you with that personalization. One of the questions that came in is, we've mentioned Clay a lot, but can we tell the audience a little bit about what Clay is and how it works?
Yeah. And so I am heavily connected with Clay. We're a huge Clay user. I actually proudly am the largest Clay user on the platform. And so Clay, essentially, if you don't know anything about it, is a spreadsheet connected with APIs. So we're all in sales or marketing, whatever you might want to department you'd say you're in. I know there's a big debate. Who cares? But there's a little bit of a debate what the Outbound falls into. And so you're familiar that you got to get your spreadsheets and you do your list building, and you take one sheet and you upload it to a software, and then it enriches it, and then you take it to another sheet, and then you validate it and everything. Clay is just a platform that everything is baked into the sheet, so that you don't have to keep doing all the switching and going in and doing all the different things. You could just do everything in one sheet. And so everybody always is like, how good is Clay's data? And it's like, no, that's the wrong question. Because Clay just integrates all of the data providers that you're going to be using anyway, and just brings them into one place. So you could upload a CSV, and instead of transferring that CSV to 8 different places, you could just put 8 different integrations in one line, and it's just all streamlined into one platform.
Yeah, I think some people make the mistake of thinking that they have to build the list in Clay, then they have to enrich it. But the way that I approach it is build the list elsewhere, import it into Clay, and then you can do the enrichments on top of the data that's in that you've put into Clay. That's how I'm seeing the best use of it. Eric, we have a couple of questions coming in, so I'm going to try and mediate these as they come through, and we've got a few minutes left. So can you share a few more examples of poke the bear?
Yes. And so I would still like, this is one of those things where like Josh Braun is the king of this. Yeah. Like I would still check out his content on this. And so like another example of like poking the bear is like, instead of asking somebody, geez, I even have to just think of like an offer, I guess for us. So instead of asking somebody like, do you need more leads in your business? It's like, how are you thinking about scaling your outbound without hiring more people? It's like it's just making them like think about the problem differently. And I wonder, so Josh Braun does this like so well. I bet I can even Google it, and his like blog will just come up.
While you're looking, Eric, another way to think about poking the bear is to come up with an observation of their business or of the individual, of the company, and then ask how they're going to solve a problem that they may not know about yet. So that's another way
Yes.
that I like to think about observation. I see that you're growing. As you grow, how are you thinking about X, Y, Z? X, Y, Z
Yeah.
being the thing that you might help them solve. So observation and probing question is often a good way to think about it.
Yep. And so like on his blog that I literally just Googled, he puts like, how do you know if your Stripe account is losing revenue without you knowing it? And then for a staffing firm that places salespeople, how do you know good interviews won't turn into bad sales hires? And then for a shipping one, how do you know you're not being overcharged for shipping? That's like other stuff too. But one that we actually took from Josh Braun, this is a great example, is that rarely does, like, in my opinion, copywriting really, like, I think value propositions and offers change the entire message, but very rarely do I think like the other things change the message. And this was a perfect example of it. We were helping people, not a bookkeeping offer. It was like a personal tax offer, but we were emailing high net worth individuals business wise. So we were doing that. And we were saying like, yeah, we can help you save on your taxes, blah, blah, blah. And then Josh Braun told me to do this, well, from his blog. And I was like, oh, that's so good. We changed it from like, we do all of your taxes and we can help with this. And, normally people save $40,000, blah, blah. And then we changed it to, how do you know that your current bookkeeper is using every legal loophole to get you all of the money back from the government you deserve? And that changed the messaging overnight. Like, it was great. And so I think that's a really good example to leave off of. And so then I just see from Mike, the next one is, any advice, recommended resources regarding outreach for B2C services, right? Would that be the next one? Or products? So the thing with B2C, so one, I would not consider outbound unless your LTV of your customers is above $10,000 and like at a minimum $5,000, but really like your LTV has to be over $10,000. So I wonder what B2C you're talking about. But otherwise, like, I probably wouldn't do B2C outreach. Like, you can't sell shampoo with cold email. It's just not going to happen. Like, it's mostly because, like, if you email somebody's business email, they're kind of like, all right, I know how you got my email. Cool. Like, my email is eric@growthenginex.com. Like, you guessed it. It's not that crazy of an email. But if you email me on my personal email, it's like, whoa, how'd you get this? Like, how did you get Eric11 Hockey Man? That's not my actual Gmail. I'm just saying. Like, how'd you get that? Like, that's crazy. And so we don't do B2C outreach for that reason. But if I were to do B2C outreach, I would only be emailing public people that I had like relevance to. So if I wanted to do, or affiliates. So if I wanted to do B2C outreach, I would be emailing affiliates and say, like, to go to other gym owners and be like, oh, like, do you want to sell supplements? Like, that's B2C, like B2B2C outreach that you could be doing. Or you could scrape Instagram for people who have their email address listed on their Instagram and they say that they're interested in hiking. And you could say, like, hey, I saw your page is all about hiking. Like, do you want some shoes? Like, I just don't know what B2C product you're like really talking about here.
Eric, I think we've got time for just one or two more. Let's jump to Manav's question, and then we might come back to Farzad.
Sure, yeah.
I'll double check the question. So Manav is asking, for clients like fractional operations and finance, where do you see CEOs really responding to that type of offer? So I think he may mean the service is fractional operations and fractional finance. What do you think?
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So that's a little bit tough too. I would say the big thing is, I would probably take a similar bookkeeping approach there too, where you want to make sure that, like, they already don't have these people on their team, and then you're emailing people who you could say, hey, like, you don't have these people on your team. You need to be thinking about this. I can help. Do you want somebody to think about it? Another good way to test this too is to, one, like, again, I would be thinking about the demand generation. So what's like the sexiest thing about your offer that you do for people that they're like, whoa, that is so crazy. Like, I'm so happy. Like, I didn't even know you would do that. I'm so happy that you do that. That's like the way I would probably slant that. And then the another thing I would also try, and we have the capability to do this because we have 600 fake inboxes, so I can just do this anytime I need to. But we'll also try just like seeing what we get the most responses on if we offer to do a service for free, and whatever gets the most bites for free, then we'll like make the best campaign we could possibly do as like normal sales messaging. Because if you offer finance services or however you pitch your finance services and nobody takes you up on a free offer, there's nothing that you can say about, like, there's nothing that you're going to do. And sometimes you're going to get so few messages back that you're not going to learn enough. So what we'll do is we'll like kind of give away I can literally call it the give away the farm campaign, especially when we're working with services companies. We'll like send from our fake domains and we're just like, all right, so finance and operations. Do you want somebody who's going to do your headcount planning for next year? And we're going to do the whole headcount planning for free. Nobody takes you up on the free one. Like, don't keep messaging people about that when you go to your sales messaging, right? Then you talk about finance and operations and you're like, all right, do you want somebody who's going to always make sure that every dollar that you spend is on software that you need every month and you're not wasting money? And I'll do it for you for free. And it's like, oh, okay, now people respond to that free one. All right, let's think about how we can do this one better when we take it to sales. So when we have services clients, like professional services clients, that's one thing that we'll do is we'll just like, what will people respond on free? And then we focus on that a little bit more.
Thanks, Eric. And I think Annie's question here, when cold emailing, should the call to action be booking a demo or another call? Just before you answer, I like to remind people that sending cold emails is all about starting conversations. So really what you should be optimizing for is a reply. So Eric already shared a couple of examples of some soft call to actions, or other people call them interest-based calls to actions. I believe you agree, Eric, but is there ever a time to use a more direct call to action?
Oh, I mean, all the time. So if you have a purely demand generation offer, go for that call. Like, kill them. That's great. You know, like, so when we were doing the LinkedIn events thing, I was like, hop on a call with me and I'll show you exactly how it works. And if you want, you just pay me to implement it. And they were like stoked. They were like, great, let's do it. We've got another customer where we don't do anything without trying to book a call, because it's literally like, hey, we can automate all of your sales tax filing. I know you're a Shopify store. Do you need to automate your sales tax filing? And they're like, yes, we hate our sales tax filing. Let's go. So if you're purely a demand generation offer and you can like book straight for the call, then go for it. These things that like are more commoditized offers or more demand capture offers. Yeah. Like, so we are a little bit different because we're running an agency. All of our customers want calls. That's just the thing. Like, just everybody just wants calls, and that's just the way that we'll do it. So we actually mostly always start our first email with some kind of call to action of going to a call. Probably my favorite call to action we'll use is like, hey, Mark, if we could help you accomplish thing, would that be useful to you? And then then they say yes. And it's like, all right, let's book some time, right? We talk about it from there. So we always try to go for a call on email one, because our customers just always want us to go for a call. But if you hear my outbounds, like on my outbound, we're not going for, like, I don't even want to call. Like, I'll provide value for them before I book a call, right? But I've got a way to sneak them onto the call. That's the most important thing. If you're going to run a campaign that doesn't book them onto a call, you need to have some carrot to like pull them to the call. Not even because you really need the call, you just need them to invest time. And I could probably spend another like 30 minutes on that. And so, yeah, we definitely do. But if you're using a lead magnet or you're using more interest, then yeah, you want to start a conversation. So we do more of the conversation starter things in like emails 2 and 3, just because like in email 3, we're usually sending like, hey, no, like this is my favorite call to action for email 3 is like, seriously, no need to hop on a call right now. Could I just send you a video of how this works? Like an under 2-minute video of how this works. And then, because all we're trying to do is just get people to just be interested. By email 3, the response rate is so low. Let's just, throw them a bone and just see if we can get somebody to say yes. So yeah, I know we're coming at time, so I just wanted to finish that.
Eric, thank you. I think you and I could talk for hours and talk more about cold email. I think another reminder is, just before Micah comes back on, is cold email can be used for investor outreach, for partnerships, for recruitment as well. So everything we've shared today, you can use the principles of cold outreach, not just for sales, but for other objectives too.
Yep. Guys, that was amazing. And I know we're hitting at time. I just want to let everybody know I am sharing in the chat some resources from both Mark and Eric. If you want to review those will also be in your follow-up emails. But guys, thanks again, Eric, Mark. This was amazing. Just thank you for sharing your insights here.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Mark, you asked great questions. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Good to be here too.
Yeah. And to our audience members, thank you all for watching and hope you all have a great rest of your day.